Hello, welcome back to the Reading Mama. My name is Heather, and today I have a mid-month wrap up because I have read so many books this month. We'll count them in a minute. Forgive me, we're working on finding a new filming location, so this is not the prettiest place in my home. There are books, lots and lots of books over there, but still trying to figure that out because I lost my filming spot to put a crib for a baby. So I digress. Hopefully this is brighter and hopefully you can hear me and not too much echoing from the room. But what have I been reading this month? I have been reading a lot. So these are the physical books. And I also did several audiobooks and a couple of ebooks. So I am going to go in order of what I read. So I started out the month with this, which is Rush of Ravens by Abigail Breyer. I had seen her all over Instagram and started following her because her book what is it called? The Kingdom Come series, I think. Yes, Till Kingdom Come. And this is book one. And she just did some really good marketing and I fell for it. And it was worth it because I really enjoyed this. From what I understand, this is going to be an epic fantasy, 8 books long. And she only has this one and then the next 2. So like a novella in between and then book 2 out. Which I'm hopefully getting soon. But I finished book 1 and I really loved it. I actually hated it and loved it. In the fact that the characters are flawed and you're screaming at them like you're being stupid. But that in and of itself shows a good author because it had me emotionally attached to these characters. So in this story, you're following primarily Ravenna, who is part of this, what do you want to call it? I forget what they do call it. Tribe, basically, a group of people who are living, and they live separate from the rest of the world because the rest of the world is kind of crazy and dark and demonic. There are these people who are called embers and they have a light inside of them, and with that light they are granted certain powers that allow them to do different things. But there's an evil entity who he is king of everything, and he is enslaving the embers, and then he is taking their magic and he lets other people take their magic. And so you have the dark magical rulers and then you have the light magical beings who are enslaved, and you can kind of see where that's going to probably end up going. But you're following Ravenna, whose tribe is completely outside of this. She knows the basics of it, but as you go through the story you learn she doesn't know everything. And so you follow her as she is the daughter of the shield maiden, the head warrior ruler of her little tribe, and Ravenna is out to prove herself. And she's young, she makes a lot of mistakes. I think she's 18. No, maybe. I read it at the beginning of the month. I can't remember exactly her age. But she's very young in it. And she's going to learn from these mistakes. But she keeps making them over and over and over. And it's very frustrating. But I don't want to give too much away because there's a lot of wow moments in this. But I really loved it because I really did draw attached to the characters. She has a young man who's been sworn to protect her by her mother, and there's just a lot of things that fall out about halfway through the book that it will spoil it if I tell you. But you follow Ravenna and her journey, and there are some other side characters and you get glimpses of them throughout. It's mostly Ravenna's story, and then every now and then you get the young man who is to protect her, Zan, and then a few others later on you get their point of views. I kind of like when I'm not just going back and forth and I know it. It's kind of a surprise, okay, I'm gonna stay with this character for a while and then, oh no, now I move on to another. And that's what this follows. But I really, really have enjoyed this. And I'm excited to continue the series. Like I said, it was some characters that I love to hate in the beginning because they were making stupid mistakes. Next up, I read a fairy tale retelling by Kate Stradling, and it's just a little novella, Maid and Minsteel, and it follows King Thrushbeard. Is the retelling. Now, if you're like me, you don't know what King Thrushbeard is. It's apparently really well known. I didn't know. I had to go back and look it up in my fairy tale book, which I am now trying to read for the rest of the month. But Grimm's brothers wrote a fairy tale called King Thrushbeard, and the basic gist of it is that the king is making her marry, but she insults everyone who comes to ask for her hand, and her father gets fed up and is like, fine, you're gonna marry whoever the next person is that walks in the door, and it's a beggar, and she then has to go with the beggar. And in this fairy tale, the beggar he's kind, but their life isn't easy and there's a lot of problems. And he's like, oh, well, you can't do this. So then we're going to do, you're not able to do this thing because you've been, pampered all your life. And so we're going to do this. And it follows that trajectory. It has a fairy tale ending. I'm not going to give all of it away, but you can guess. Maid and Minsteel follows that. And I think it took a kind of a unique take on it, because you have a young girl whose father is very wealthy, but he's not kind, he's not considerate, he's not a family man, okay? And he has same thing similarly, but a little more violent, I'm just gonna say, or not violent, but just cruel, a little more cruel setup for how he's trying to marry off his daughter. And she ends up having to marry the minstrel who comes to the door next. And you have, what I thought was interesting is the way that Kate rewrote it so that it has both of them are redeemed, because in the original fairy tale, both the minstrel or the beggar and the princess are kind of nasty characters, and you're not really rooting for either in the end. You're like, oh yay, they ended up together, but who cares, because they were horrible people. But in Maid and Minstrel, I feel like they both made mistakes and they are both redeemed in the end, and it's a very sweet story because you're rooting for both of them as they learn together, as they grow kinder and gentler. They just are kinder and gentler from the beginning, and so I really enjoyed this. I'm really enjoying Kate Stradling's retellings. I also did Bright and Bone last month and really enjoyed it, so highly recommend Kate Stradling. What did I read next? Next, I did an audiobook called The Line Between by Tosca Lee, and I absolutely loved it. So this is a end of the world dystopian thriller. And in this, you're following Winter, and her mom has taken her and her sister to join a doomsday cult. And they're part of this cult, and some bad things happen in the cult. She ends up getting kicked out of the cult, goes with her friend, and then the world ends. And in such a way that I had to keep checking the publication date of the book, because it was a little too familiar from 6 years ago. And so the world is going to crazy, and Winter realizes that her cult has some of the answers. The cult leader actually has something that the world might need to know. And so she has to cross country to get these seeds and specimens and things like that he has been purchasing to proper authorities, and all kinds of chaos ensues. There's a lot of just interesting concepts, that would happen to somebody who's traveling across country, who's very new to the world, doesn't know, and throughout it she's questioning, well, was he right all along? Was the doomsday cult right? Because all these bad things are happening, is because I'm a sinner? And she's trying to figure out herself and figure out the world all at the same time, and all these things are conflicting. She meets a young man along the way who is honorable and wants to help her. And yeah, it was really, really good. I'm excited to read the sequel. I'm waiting for my library to get it right now, but I really enjoyed The Line Between by Tosca Lee, and it was a great audiobook. Then I did the audiobook for Rapunzel's Gambit by Mary Meacham. And Mary Meacham, I know, has like a million books out, and this was my very first one for her, and I think it was a great place to start. She has the audiobook free on YouTube, I think, but it's also on, I listened to it on Libby. It was so funny. So Rapunzel's Gambit is obviously a Rapunzel retelling, but it was just so much funny banter because Rapunzel is kind of a quirky character. She likes to get into mischief, cause trouble, and she has a whole learning curve. And she ends up meeting a dragon and enlisting him in her way to basically sucker gold from the ruling classes in her kingdom to help get back to the everyday people. There's a lot of different things that go on. I really enjoy the concept. I loved the dragon and Rapunzel's banter. I loved their way of kind of the Robin Hood mentality, and then the way that I love the way that it ended. It was a really unique, I didn't expect it to go that way. And so highly recommend it. The great audiobook, very funny. It was very laugh out loud funny. And then because of that, I went and read another Mary Meacham book, and I'm gonna probably try to read her to zero because I think they're short, sweet, and funny. And you just need that sometimes. They're usually romance. I could take or leave the romance. I really just enjoy the funny banter and some of the one-liners. They're really hilarious. And then embedded in the two books that I read, there was like these deeper thoughts, because Rapunzel talking about, the poverty level and taking care of, and there's a lot of social classism. And then the next one I read was Scarlett and the Dark Woods, and I read that as an ebook form, and it's called Autumn Fairy Tales, a Red Riding Hood retelling. And in Scarlett in the Dark Woods, Scarlett is the Red Riding Hood, and she's part of a small village that has magical powers, and they boast that they are just the safest place, the best place to live, because everybody keeps everyone in check, and if you get enough bad marks, then on Shining Day, you're cast out of the village, okay? And so there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of fear managed authority. The authority is dishing this out. She ends up, her grand gets kicked out of the village. She's shunned right at the beginning, and sorry, spoiler. And Scarlett goes and follows her. And throughout the story, you're getting all these different nuances, because Scarlett, again, is a very annoying character, in my opinion. But most of it's because she's just so naive. Like, she just really has this elitism of her village and doesn't understand the rest of the world. She doesn't understand community. She doesn't understand the close relationships of people. She doesn't understand how they work together. She doesn't understand how they utilize the different things, the different skills and magical abilities and things like that, and why it's okay. And so she has a lot of elitist kind of mindset throughout. And it's just a unique story. It's a sweet little romance at the end, but it's kind of, there's a lot of funny banter, but there were some deeper thoughts about classism and authority powers, and I really, really enjoyed that. Then I did a trilogy audiobook. So it's by Aaron Beatty, not sure. The Traitors Kiss, The Traitors Ruin, and The Traitors Kingdom. And I'm not gonna go into all of it. I enjoyed it. It was fun. Fairly clean. They wait until they're married kind of romance, but there is some, yearning in there, if you want to say. But the basic premise of The Traitors Kiss, now let me make sure I get my story straight. Traitors Kiss follows a young girl who's got a lower birth, and so you kind of have a Mulan moment there, because she fails at the matchmakers and nobody's going to want to marry you. Well, then she ends up working for the matchmaker, and that sets her whole life into a whole nother trajectory where she is able to become somebody who, because of her intelligence, her ability to observe, her ability to blend in with others, to her ability to just think through things, she is put into these high stakes situations. In the first book, she helps save the royal ladies who are off to go to their weddings. In the second book, she helps save the prince of the kingdom. And the third book is like a whole nother, wow, it was intense. It was very intense. That's why I went through them so quickly. But I really did enjoy them. I did some of them audio and some of them ebook, but very intense. There is some yearning in there. That's not the main premise. There's a lot of action and a lot of different concepts explored as you go throughout the kingdom. Then I read Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and I talked about this in one of my other videos where I share, pairings that I read along with it. I love this more than I thought I would. This does not agree with anything I believe about a lot of things, because I am a conservative Christian. However, it's science fiction, and I can just think that some of the things that they say are science, in fact, I believe are fiction, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it. But it was so funny. I really am looking forward to the movie, as I said. Like I said in the other book, this is just fun. So you follow a young man, Rylan Grace, who is a middle school teacher. He used to be a hotshot kind of scientist in microbiology, I believe. And he had this wacky idea, and basically when he published his paper, he kind of got laughed out of the science world. So now he's the cool middle school teacher. Well, he is somehow tasked with being someone who goes into outer space to help save the world, the earth, from the destruction of the sun. So really, he's saving our sun. And there's a lot of things that go on, and I don't know how to explain it in a lot of, just because there's an amnesia trope, and he doesn't understand everything, and he slowly comes to a knowledge of who he is and why he's there and what he's doing as those memories slowly come back. And so you jump back and forth in time a lot, and I think Andy Weir does an amazing job of doing that. And the whole way that he does everything that happens is just great. It's hilarious. A lot of one-liners, and just the main character's thoughts are hilarious because you're getting his inner monologue and he's, why do I do this? And, oh, I'm clearly American because I think in, inches and feet, but I also must be a scientist because I can do this. And being an American is stupid because sometimes you think in imperial measurements and sometimes in metric measurements. And there's other things besides the measurements, but that part was just particularly hilarious to me as an American. And so I just really enjoyed it. I'm sure the movie's going to be wonderful. And then I mentioned my other one, I read Hidden Figures. I actually did not read the physical book, even though I have the physical book, okay? I know. I listened to the audiobook, and it was phenomenal. If you've seen the movie, you know what it's about. But you're following mainly 3 African-American women in their science careers. And it's a biographical story of what they did and what they contributed to the world in mathematics and science and space in particular. And it's very, very good. I really loved it. I liked the epilogue kind of finishes it up for you, but you kind of get what their parts are in the space race, but you also see, what was their role in society and how they did all these things. Like, it's called Hidden Figures because they did all these things and opened so many doors, and yet they're not really known until, the movie came out. And so it was really, really wonderful book. I really enjoyed it. Next up, I read my first Ursula Le Guin because I've been told that is a, key science fiction author. And so I read or listened to The Lathe of Heaven, and it was weird. It was so weird. Basically, you have a man who his dreams come true, but not in a prophetic way, but they alter the past. And so therefore they alter the present. And when he wakes up, all the changes are being done and he has no control over it. Well, he starts meeting with a therapist. I think it's court ordered is what it was. And the therapist finds a way to start manipulating that. And so you have that man manipulating the world basically through this guy who's the dreamer, and it gets very weird. And then there's turtle aliens at the end, and it was very, very weird, and I'm still processing all my thoughts on it. But while it took me a little bit to get into it, I really did enjoy it because it had so many deep concepts of authority and its manipulation of power, and what really is humanitarian, what is the right thing to do for society. And though you think this, sometimes you make one change and you don't realize the ramifications of what that would be. And so that was very interesting, and I enjoyed that. I also read Betrayal of Eden by Erin Phillips, and I really, really, really loved this book. I'm part of her Spine Collector series, trying to help promote her newest book, which is coming out in just a couple months, which is the sequel to this. And so I had to read this, of course, first. Now, I know Chantel is reading this as part of her Indie Book Club Challenge in April, and I will probably reread it then as well, because I believe Erin's also doing a reread as we get ready for the release of her book at the end of April. But this was wonderful. So this is a Count of Monte Cristo retelling in a trilogy, I believe is what it's supposed to be. And I have only seen the movie. I have not read the book. Now I really want to read the book, but I've tried several times and failed, so we'll see how that works out. But in this, you have a gender-swapped Count of Monte Cristo retelling in a dark fantasy. Yeah, I think that's how she bills it. But anyways, you're following 16-year-old Eden, and she works for a school. She lives in the rough part of town, and she is trying to better herself. She's trying to be able to just live a better life because life is rough for her. And in that she has some very naive and innocent notions and doesn't realize how people are manipulating her. And I'm not going to give too much more. If you've seen Count of Monte Cristo, you can kind of guess where some of this is going. There is a character in here that I do not know. I'm guessing it's true to the book more than the movies, but there is a boy named Hunter Calder, and he is an indentured servant working for one of the families that is connected to Eden in the royal wing of this town of Cartier City. And I don't know how it's going to connect, but there's all this going on, and this is a city in a country that is used to have magic, and now only their province has magic. In the city, there's called the Grimoire, and it's a special book, and you have to have a key to use it, and there's a lot that goes into that I'm not going to give away because it gives a lot. You kind of need you'd figure it out in the first part of the book if I said that, so it's a spoiler. But anyways, as you follow Eden and Hunter, their paths cross briefly. I'm sure they're going to cross more in the next books. But it is very much the beginning sets of kind of Monte Cristo, but in a much more fantastical, fun kind of way. And once again, we have a main character who is just very naive, very innocent, and unaware of how she's being used by the people around her, as she's a decent person. She's not self-motivated she doesn't realize she's self-motivated and focusing on herself in a lot of things because she's kind and gentle, but she does want a better life than what she has. And because of that, she's ignoring a few things that happen in her life. So I'm excited to read The Hunt for Calypso. I have an arc, which I'm so excited. It's my first arc ever, and I am excited to read that, so I'll come back and let you know about that. But you can pick up Betrayal of Eden now anywhere that she sells it, and if you go to her website, you can get a handy dandy, this is not, yeah, signed copy for no extra price. Just go to our website and order instead of Amazon. And she has hardback, some beautiful copies, scratch and dent sometimes. It's a great book, and I'm excited to read the rest of the series. So that is what I've read so far this month, and that is a grand total of 10 books for February, on February 14th. So we'll see how the rest of the month goes. Thank you so much for watching. If you have read any of these books, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. If any of them piqued your interest and you have questions, drop that there as well. And if you made it to the end of this video, leave me a little heart emoji for Valentine's Day, and have a blessed day.